is the conclusion of our webinar at this point. We do have a few minutes for a couple of questions, and we did have a couple questions come in. Dan, Phil, do you guys have a moment to answer a few of the questions we have?
Of course.
Sure. All right, let me just see here. Actually, this is a fantastic first question, and one that I'm sure a lot of people are wondering about, but the question is, when setting goals, how do I know when I've set too many? It's a great question. I'll give that to Dan. You want to go ahead first?
Well, I will tell you what the research says about it. That same research I referenced earlier about setting stretch goals that you hit about 60 to 70% of the time, it also holds for the number of goals you set. So the sweet spot is somewhere around 4 or 5 goals. If you have more than that in the hopper at any given point in time, you're probably your impact is going to be diluted, and your efforts are going to be diluted. So 4 to 5 is a good starting point. What I would also say is, if you don't have any goals, just start with a couple. You don't have to start with 6. Just set a couple. But if you've got 10, cross half of them off the list and focus on because there will be some on that list of 10 that are more important than others, even though they all might be really, really important. Focus is where the power comes from.
Phil is a managing partner for Steadily Growing Agency. What are some of your goal philosophies and the count that you've done to make a company be so successful?
I would say that keeping it simple as possible, even if you're an expert goal setter, it's hard to have too many focuses and priorities. And so simply saying, what are the top 2 to 3 initiatives we're going to focus on right now? Yeah. And that's it. And keeping it that simple. And then each week saying, what am I going to do this next week? What's my next step to accomplish that goal? And I found that I used to set goals and have each year annually, like 26 different points. And I just found that for me, I usually will set 3 or 4 now, and I'll actually achieve them, and they'll become more meaningful to me. And I think that's applicable to business. Outside of your day-to-day work, your actual day job, it's hard to do more than 2 or 3 things, to actually operationalize them and have a real impact in an organization.
That's another great point, is that you do want to make sure that if you are setting goals, you set them in the context of everything else that's already going on. So we have this tendency to just keep adding to the list and never subtract. If there is a really important priority we need to add, let's also ask the question, what should we get rid of that will make room for this goal or priority we're setting?
And I think that leads right into the next question, which is, should I adjust my goals throughout the year? Any of you guys?
It's interesting. Doing a check-in, it depends. Is this annually? Is this, I think checking in, weekly, and maybe it's not on a daily basis, but weekly or at least monthly is a wise thing to do. But I think it's more important, rather than simply set a goal, see, a month or 2 down the road that there is no way we're going to hit that. It does make sense to course correct. There's no reason to look ahead to say that is absolutely unachievable, but let's do what is still stretched but realistic. And so I do think it's important to iterate, and what you're going to find in goal setting and in business in general in life, nothing ever goes as planned, and new surprises will come in, and you learn along the way. And what was the original goal may not be appropriate a month or 2 into it because of something that changed or learned or a resource that became available, and hey, let's set goals in line with who we are today.
In that example, Phil, are you adjusting a goal, or are you just creating a brand new goal?
It depends on how much the shifting has happened internally. If possible, it's okay to just adjust the goal and move forward. I think that's the easiest. Sometimes it's we need a whole new goal because this was something we hadn't been able to even consider or conceive in our original brainstorming session. I don't know, Dan, if you'd add anything to that.
I think it's critical that you do that, because it comes back to, why are we setting these goals in the first place? Is it just so that at the end of the year or quarter or whatever, we can pat ourselves on the back and say, I'm awesome? Maybe that's part of it. But the reason we're setting the goals is because it's going to allow us to perform in ways that we wouldn't otherwise perform. It's going to help us to focus on those priorities that we've identified are most important. So if the goal is no longer serving that purpose, in Phil's example, let's say that the goal is just unrealistic and way too optimistic, well, then that's no longer going to motivate any kind of a focus or behavior on our part. So we should change that goal so that it does provide the kind of motivation and focus and direction that we're hoping it will. So as soon as a goal has outlived that purpose, I would say we should consider adjusting it, changing it, moving it, not just leaving it on the books because we happen to set it at some point in time.
That's fantastic. And I think we have just time for one more, but the last question is, what is the best way to track and monitor all of our various marketing goals? I'm going to turn that to you, Dan, to discuss maybe ways to track goals in general, and maybe I'll follow up with marketing goal-specific tools.
So tracking goals in general, I mentioned earlier, there's software platforms that do that. You can Google, goal-setting software, that kind of stuff, because I think that enables you to create transparency. If you put it in a spreadsheet, it's tricky. And a lot of those software platforms will also integrate with things like your mail or your calendar, and so there's reminders and other follow-ups that are in your face all the time that really help. So I would recommend those types of tools to you. If you can, avoid keeping it buried in a Word document or a spreadsheet. But in the absence of some of those other tools, you could just kind of use Outlook and think reminders on your calendar and things to help you.
And I think you had a couple actual recommendations of software you guys use.
BetterWorks is one that we use. There's another out there we've vetted pretty carefully called KPI Fire that's also pretty good.
Okay, and we will send all these out to you guys as well with that. As far as tracking your marketing goals, Google Analytics is probably the #1 resource for that, and I would argue it's probably one of the least understood free programs that every person has. They just simply don't monitor it, and the reason they don't monitor it is it's a bit confusing. We actually have a link out we can send the 2 days to get your analytics certification, and so it really focuses you on the most important details of what analytics can provide you. But that is the single most important tool, in my opinion. There are a number of other tools on top of that, and we also touched on attribution, and so there are some attribution programs out there and even courses that you can take to help you define first click attribution, last click attribution, and all the others. But those, to me, are the best ways to track your marketing goals. The real secret to them are simply tagging the marketing campaigns that you're doing, and we do that through UTM parameters added to the destination URL. Again, we can add more information, and Fluid actually has a UTM builder on our site you can use for this exact purpose. But you just need to actually put those tags onto your campaigns and then use Google Analytics to look inside of it to determine which campaigns actually worked, and then remove the ones that aren't really working. And so there are a number of other high-level tools, but I'm going to venture to say most of us aren't doing analytics well enough, so I'll focus your energy in one area. Phil, anything on that?
No, I would say that Dustin and his team is an excellent resource in terms of those technical marketing goals and digital and helping set those so they're in your face. And Dan, I'm sure would be happy to respond to additional questions regarding organizational goals and ways to track and measure those. But